All right, it is Monday, June 7th, 2021, the day of my birth. My name is Jim Vessel. Welcome to Competitive Corner. I'm once again joined by my lovely co-host, who is slightly late today, Alex McDougall. Alex, welcome again, and yeah, good to see you. Yeah, of course. So if you guys are wondering why we started half an hour late, is because Alex needed a bit of extra time. No problem. I'm happy to, make everyone wait an extra half an hour for Alex, but it's good to see him. So better late than never, though, as they say. And hold on, I don't think you're coming through. So let me just fix this. Don't think I get volume from you. Aha, that's right. Try talking again.
Okay. Yes, I am talking.
All right, Alex, we have Alex's audio. So if you guys are wondering why things are wacky, we've now switched to Discord for the audio of our cast. So that hopefully means that the audio issues that have been plaguing the tech audio issues that have been plaguing the show are now over. However, the human audio issues caused by my incompetence will still forever remain. So if you're wondering why certain things just don't work, it's generally now because my screw up rather than the tech itself. Whereas before, the tech itself was causing a lot of the problems. So hopefully we're coming through loud and clear. If you guys are joining us live, please give us a hello in chat. Love to hear from you, our lovely audience. All right, Alex, before we get started, just two quick announcements. First of all, we passed 1,400 followers on YouTube. So thank you very much for everyone that has followed the channel since the inception. My goal was to hit 1,000 followers by my birthday, which is today. And I was successful. As far as Twitch is concerned, we're not doing as great. We have 418 followers on Twitch. So the goal was to hit 500 by my birthday. So we're about, 90 short, but I'm not a greedy man. So if you guys are watching this on YouTube or listening to this podcast form, please make sure to follow us on both those channels, both on Twitch and on YouTube. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe. It's absolutely free, costs you nothing, but it just brings me all the joy in the world to know that you're out there following our exploits. Second of all, now that I am over 1,000 followers on YouTube, I'm able to actually post community posts on the YouTube channel, which means the weekly stream schedule is now both on my Instagram, JimboV_paints, and on the YouTube community post part of Duplicity Paint Studio YouTube channel. So if you guys are wondering what the stream schedule is or how often we're streaming, what time we're streaming, or the subjects, you can check that out at JimboV_paints Instagram. I post that generally on Fridays for the following week. And also as part of that, I did make an announcement last week on the Best Overall show. But as we move into summer, as the weather gets nicer, as I'm focusing on other things, including more curated YouTube content, so I'm doing more editing rather than live streams. And as just like I want to be outside more and enjoying my life, I've slightly cut down the stream schedule a little bit. So Competitive Corner will be continuing every Monday. Best Overall show and Politics and Plastic will now be alternating the Thursday slot at 6 p.m. And then we'll be doing one hobby stream a week as opposed to two. And I believe that's on Fridays, and you can check that out on the channel as well. Other than that, tomorrow, the other last announcement I have, tomorrow is my long-awaited Play on Tabletop fourth appearance. I believe it's going live at 12 p.m. Pacific. No, 12, wait. Noon is p.m.? I always get them confused. Noon is p.m., right? 12 p.m.
It's not midnight. It's not coming out at midnight.
Okay, it's not coming at midnight. So it's coming out at noon tomorrow at Pacific time. And I was originally going to be available to actually be on that live chat, but I no longer will be available because I had some work stuff come up. But me and Gary Sacco, who is my opponent, we will be doing a video where we commentate the whole battle report. So we're going to actually we're going to kind of watch the battle report together and kind of do a live commentary. Not necessarily live, but we're going to do a commentary of the battle report sometime this week, maybe even tomorrow night. So hopefully, actually not tomorrow night because I'm unavailable tomorrow night. So at some point in the next 3 or 4 days, we're going to actually do a commentated version of that battle report where we can kind of talk through what we were thinking or not thinking, as you will see in the battle report, because this is my first like real life game in like forever, and I made a lot of dum-dums in that game, so and you guys will see, but I won't spoil much more than that. So with that said, we've had a busy week in releases. Obviously AdMech has now hit the block, and I think we've seen the full scope of AdMech, but we've also now seen Sisters. So between AdMech and Sisters, we've had a pretty like intense, I guess, release schedule as far as books are concerned, Alex. I don't know how much AdMech I can't remember how much. Did we talk a lot of AdMech last week?
I honestly don't remember too much either. I've played against them 3 times now, and they're disgusting.
Okay.
They are a huge problem. I think that they are probably more powerful than Jukari, which is not okay.
But we didn't, last time we spoke, there was no FAQ and nerfs. I think that's happened since we spoke last.
Yeah. Yeah, Jukari took a proper nerf.
So what do you think, I guess, what do you think of the FAQ? And I know I talked about this on Thursday's show, and we were patiently awaiting this FAQ. I think I'd mentioned it on the show last week. But I guess overall, what do you think of the Jukari side of the nerfs and then the overall FAQ?
I think the Jukari side of the nerfs are exactly what we wanted. I think they were very targeted, and I really don't have any issues with it. Dealing with some of the Cult of Strife issue, dealing with the double activating Merger Succubus, dealing with just Raiders being undercosted, Razar being undercosted. Like, it hit a lot of the issues. I think this is going to drop them to probably like not really acceptable win rates, but not the 70% that we've been seeing.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a good start. It's a really good start.
Yeah, and it definitely got rid of the worst abuses. I would have liked to have seen, the only change that they missed as far as I'm concerned is the cleaning up the cross-faction shenanigans with like Cult of Strife traits and stuff. So I would have liked to them have seen that outside of a real space raiding party, you can't bring, like, for instance, like if you want a real space raiding party, there's specific rules on how to bring, say, like different cults and covens and cabals or whatever into that real space raiding party. So that's the battalion where you have one of each character. But I would have liked to have seen them clean up the language where you can't take essentially like a Cult of Strife detachment and then put like a I don't know, like a homunculus in it with the full benefits of their own like warlord traits and whatever. Like it should break.
Yeah.
If you take a patrol, sorry, so if you take a patrol of a single coven or whatever, it should be pure. That's the only thing that I think they should have fixed. If you want to do the mix and match, just like everyone else, you got to take that real space raider detachment, and that comes with its own benefits and downsides. So I'd like to have seen them clean up that. And then obviously we still haven't seen a cult Book of Rust FAQ. So I was thought maybe it could be in there, but we haven't seen anything. Maybe they just thought there wasn't anything there to give us. But yeah, I mean, overall, you know, and I've said this before, I think the rules that the cleanup of the rules was really good. That was probably the best thing that they've actually done in the last 6-7 months is that cleanup of the rules. And the points changes on Dark Eldar, I think were just right. Like Games Workshop does have a tendency to overcorrect sometimes, or undercorrect.
I'm aware. I played James Taylor Call.
Yeah, their ability to actually like do like a balanced nerf is few and far between. Usually they overcorrect or they undercorrect, right? So I think actually they nailed 4 out of the 6 big issues that I saw with the book. Yeah. So and I think I mentioned the 5th issue. The only other thing I think that I thought maybe could take a look is, I mean, they didn't really get a points update, so I still think certain things are probably like a point too cheap. But we'll see. But I'm happy with where the book is. I think those. Oh, I actually thought the one thing though is, I did think that the nerf to Dark Technomancer Liquefiers was actually more extreme than I thought.
You were expecting them to just actually get like they can hurt themselves.
Yeah, I was expecting them to maybe say like on the number of shots, the model carrying the liquefier takes a mortal wound, or maybe that maybe it's just like less effective. Like maybe on weapons that automatically hit, it's like say +1 damage or +1 wound, but not both. The fact that it's completely pointless on those, I thought, I'm glad, because that makes my life easier as a player that doesn't play Dark Eldar. But I actually thought it was more than I was asking for when it came to the nerf. Like it was more of a nerf than I expected, I guess, which is rare. Actually, as I said, it's not rare.
Maybe they just saw that the power level was too extreme, because I think the overall win rate of Drukhari was like 75% still, something really high. But the people that were actually taking the Dark Technomancer Liquefiers were like in the 84%. Like there was people that were just, I don't know, either they didn't own the models or were just trying to be like snowflakes and didn't want to run it. Like those people were actually dragging the overall win rate down. And the people that were committed to like 15 or 20 Dark Technomancer Liquefiers were literally at like an 85% win rate. So they just went, nope, no, we're not allowed to have that anymore.
Yeah.
Which fine.
And we saw.
I didn't want to play into that.
Yeah, we saw a few events this week, and this is probably basically the last hurrah of the Dark Eldar. Between that and
I wouldn't go quite so far as to say that. They're still really good.
Yeah. Like this week, obviously we have the ACO, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. It's probably the last flight of the Drukhari as they currently exist, and the last flight of the AdMech as they currently exist, until they basically swap roles as far as the meta, kings of the meta, or queens, or non-binary, whatever.
Or extra binary.
Extra binary.
AdMech.
Yeah.
Super binary.
Yeah. What do they identify as? Robots. So. Okay, so I'm happy with the nerfs. I'm happy with the FAQ. Was there any FAQ things that you felt that they didn't address? Like, because I've already seen a few things that people are trying to pick apart, but I thought for the most part they answered almost every question that I had, or any of those like weird edge cases of field badsies, like the fucking Pythagorean charges. They fixed the fight last, strike last, fight first, strike first, charging, not charging, order of operations.
There's one that got missed in that fight first combo. But I mean, they were going to miss it. Something like that anyway. But stooping dive from Custodes with the bikes, it's like before any chargers even go. And that one
It's a
got
super
missed.
strike.
Like,
It's a super strike first.
yeah, like what is it? We don't
Well,
really
I
know.
think in that
But,
case,
I mean,
like, yeah, I think,
they hit like 95%.
yeah, and I mean that's expected. I think at the end of the day, what we're seeing, and this is something that I've talked a lot about before, which is Games Workshop. They can write rules, and maybe their rules writing is not great, but where I think, and I think they did the designer's commentary. I think they need to do, and I saw some of that actually in there's so they did a preview for the AOS rules coming, like some of the pages of the new AOS for 3, and there's sections with like designer's commentary. So I think that is actually a really important tool that Games Workshop can use to communicate intent, because as we saw, and this is a great example, so I had a very long rant 3 or 4 months ago when they made the Death Guard movement changes, right? We were talking about what is the fucking intent of this rule, this inexorable advance. What is the intent of the rule? And at first, people assumed the intent wrong, because when that first FAQ dropped, what we learned is that the rules as written were actually correct, and that their intent was for them to be slowed down. But then they did a 180 with this FAQ, and it turns out that no, actually we were right, but rather than change the rules at that point, someone hastily wrote the answer and didn't really look at the larger consequences of that answer, essentially. And now we've learned actually their intent was that Death Guard can move through forests and whatever unaffected. So this whole I guess this whole thing when it comes to intent, I feel like is such an impossible thing. And so when their intent is always impossible to guess, right? But that's why I think that designers' commentaries are so important, because with that designer's commentary, even if there's maybe an edge case where they missed it as so they're like, hey, these abilities, i.e. this, and this, even if there's say one that they missed by accident, because now we actually see their intent, we see their logic, we see what they're trying to do, it's a lot easier for a TO to say, hey, this is what they were trying to do. And the fact that they missed this one is actually probably closer to being a typo rather than them being like, no, they intentionally did that. You know what I'm saying? Like it just gives TOs a little bit of a better, I guess, grounds for better, making those calls. And I wish they did more of it for almost everything.
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes it'll be like, it's like a list that's incomplete, but intentionally so. Like they'll list 3 cases of it occurring, but there happens to be like 16. The point of it when they write it out like that isn't that like, oh, it only affects these 3 cases and the other 13 are missed. Like clearly just use your head. This is a list. There's an etc. at the end of this. This encompasses all cases. Use your brain.
Yeah, and then also with the actual commentary, putting that specific list of rules aside, the commentary, because it now explains their intent very clearly, what they're trying to do, the way that it's supposed to work, then we can take that and we can use that as basically a precedent for other similar rulings. Whereas before you couldn't, because as we saw with the Death Guard thing, it was a very clear example of what we thought the intent was, which was that they should be able to move through forests. But then the FAQ came out and everyone that was like, the intent was this, was wrong. But then they reversed it. So actually they were right. It's like, God, guys, can you guys get better technical writers, please?
Yeah.
The one thing
that's been a problem for a long time.
The one thing that I did feel is still a little bit, the whole remain stationary thing is there's already been some, I don't know. There's already been some, I guess, controversy around transports, and then also there's some conversation around demon summoning, whether that Death Guard can move and summon because they count as remaining stationary. But it just comes down to legacy. And all of it always happens when there's legacy wording. So this is 8th edition demon summoning rule, which says instead of moving, they can summon the demon. But remaining stationary is actually a type of movement. So if you actually read the movement rules, when you choose a unit to move, you choose one of 3 things. So one of 4 things. You choose to make a normal move, an advanced move, a fallback, or remain stationary. Those are your 4 options when you pick a unit to move. So so the demon rules say instead of choosing to move, so instead of picking one of those 4 things, and one of them is remaining stationary, then you can summon. So I think it's pretty clear, but there's lots of arguments that no, they can now move and then summon. But I'm like, well, it's old 8th edition wording interacting with 9th edition rules. So like, yeah,
Yeah.
is that what like? But again, this is now a case where it's like rules written. I think I'm right, but they might come out later and say no. The intent is that they can do that.
Yeah, it's always got to be the case of the TO, unfortunately, and sometimes they will choose the one that we will find out later is wrong, but honestly, there is no wrong answer at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously there is if you are intentionally being stupid with your ruling, but the TO attempting to make the right call is just going to be the right call until there's proof otherwise. What this has really done is strangely made me really miss like indexes.
Yeah.
Like indexes unified everything. Okay, everyone got written at the same time. All the wording, like all the language is the same. And now that we actually have like different languages being used for 8th and 9th, it's really, it's making the game unnecessarily complicated, unfortunately.
Yeah. And let's talk about sisters a little bit. So one thing, okay, so actually there's two things I just want to quickly touch on. I did make a plea to Games Workshop last week around digital rules. And just so you guys are aware, there are digital Sisters of Battle. The digital Sisters of Battle Codex is already out there. So, and same with AdMech. Like they exist in the world. So, and I would buy it if I could buy it. So Games Workshop, once again, please give me a digital book. Second, I think that was the only thing I want to say is like, guys, like, please just give me a digital copy so I can buy it. But Sister, so far, based on what you've seen, is the book actually released yet, or is it actually physically come out next Saturday?
No, it's Saturday. 4 days from now. Yeah.
Okay, so it comes out physically this week, but obviously I already have a digital copy of it, just so you know. So I've taken a look through it, and overall, it feels like, for me, that this is a shift rather than a direct nerf or a direct like buff. So what are your initial thoughts based on what you've seen?
It does seem to be definitely like a side grade. Like Sisters were already, again, one of the best armies in the game. For a while there, they were the best army in the game, I think. The loss of advance and charge as a stratagem, or inherently to some units, is kind of interesting. Some units gained it, like the Penitent Engines can now advance and charge, which is a pretty big buff to them. Mechanically, the codex still works pretty cleanly. I think it's pretty good. I just don't know like a raw power level, because you get opinions from all sorts of places, and I'm not going to listen to all of them, because some of them aren't going to hold any weight. Some of the people at Art of War are saying that it's like somewhat better than it was before, and that's probably the opinion that I'll go with now. I haven't like done a deep dive yet, and I haven't had to play against it yet. It's really where I wish the rest of the two prior codexes would have been, because Sisters seem like very strong but manageable, whereas unless you're a certain codex, AdMech is just going to like blow you out of the water with almost zero rebuttal.
Yeah, I think it seems to me their melee got stronger. They got more melee options between the what's her name? I'm just gonna call her the High Lord Chica. Between her and the Paragons and Morgan Vol, and then the Paragon suits, the Nundums as they're calling them, and then also the Sword and Shield Sisters. It seems like their melee got a lot better, and then their main shooting units, which were the Retributors, which were look, and I'll be very honest, guys. Retributors were the fact that every army saw basically 3 units with 3 to 4 multi-meltas and 2 cherubs. It was oppressive. It was an oppressive amount of shooting damage, to the point where I actually think the existence of Sisters armies almost single-handedly kills the vehicle meta in the old like 3 units especially with the strat where they can shoot 36 inches, no penalties, and miracle dice. Like you basically guarantee picking up 2 to 3 vehicles or a Diamond Charon or 2 Diamond Charons a turn with 3 units of like Sisters. Like it's just, and the fact that they can kind of pop on a board edge. So I found that the shooting from them was like super oppressive and too strong, and so I'm glad that they were nerfed. I think they're now on par with other similar style units like Havocs, Devastators, those kinds of things, and they're still good. Look, don't forget, Miracle Dice, they're not as good as you're not getting as many, but the whole concept, the whole like playability of Miracle Dice means that these units, when you need them to do work, they will do work. And
Yeah.
I think that the Miracle Dice mechanic before like was just way too good as far as I was concerned. It just made the army way too reliable. The fact that you could do like 12-inch, 11-inch charges reliably, the fact that you could instantly kill 6 wound, or is it 6 to 8 wound models with your meltas instantly? Like you could just be like, okay,
Yeah.
I need to kill this thing, so I'm gonna pick like a 3 and a whatever, and now it's just dead. Like it's just it made them so reliable, and it just really fucked up the math, the amount of Miracle Dice they used to get before. So I'm glad that they toned that down. And then I'm just glad that
any mechanic that can get rid of variability is inherently going to be super strong. We saw that early on in 8th with like Marius Calgar and Yilliman, where that was like a new thing. Like, oh my god, reroll everything, like all hits, all wounds. That's again where you just start to like take the math out of, or take the chance out of the game. Like you are so accurate and so efficient that you don't have to really like think about it. You're like, I know I'm going to get this many hits. And the same thing with the Miracle Dice. I don't need to roll for it. I just here's 6 damage. No questions asked.
Yeah, it's just
so crazy powerful.
And like, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. If Thousand Suns get like a Fate Dice, Miracle Dice mechanic, I'll be very happy. In my own selfish way, which I don't think they will, because that would require them putting some thought into a Chaos Codex, and I don't think Games Workshop will do that.
You'll have a pool of Fate Dice, and it'll just be 5. You just have 5 dice at the beginning of the game, and that's it. You won't get to generate any.
Yeah, that's right. I think, you know what? Like, you know how like the Chaos Space Marines are like, they're like 10,000 years long war, very bitter. I think Games Workshop does their best to like match the player temperament to the fluff. They're like, how do we make the Chaos Space Marine players and people that play Thousand Suns of Death Card as bitter as possible? We're going to give them rules that feel like they could have been good. How do we just actually put in like 1 minute more of effort? And then we're going to make sure that other books get better stuff that's like objectively better, and just kind of in the next codex, right? And then we're gonna take away all those small things that make your faction actually usable. Anyways, that's neither here nor there.
Too little, too late.
Any standouts as far as like, obviously Morven Val she seems like a beast for the points and the force multiplication, but anything else as far as the units that you feel is a standout?
Did we ever get a proper understanding of the negative damage on the Nundums? Because there was like a missing sentence that was just like they reduce damage by 1, and there was no like floor or like to a minimum of 1, and their points value. Because I didn't catch that. I heard a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, so like, the wording is kind of messed up. It basically, there's 2 typos. One typo is basically that they reduce damage by 1 with no minimum. So they're essentially they're immune to damage 1. And then the other typo is that they're 240 points a model. So people are like,
so do we have an answer on that yet?
No, we don't have an answer, but the book's not even out. So I assume we're not going to get an answer until 2 weeks after minimum.
Yeah. Because it's like, maybe that's not a typo. Because again, we're, like you just said, we always guess on intention. Maybe they are 240 points a model and are immune to damage 1. You know, a model that's just like immune to small arms fire entirely. Yeah, it might have to be 240 points. It's probably that both are wrong, but whatever.
Yeah,
those seem great.
Yeah, there's a few comments in chat. Dr. Dutz is saying that Repentia are more killy, which they need to be on the table, which I actually like. Look,
oh yeah.
So here's the thing. I actually think that the fact that like, I don't mind that, because for me, the Repentia in Rhinos being able to pop out the 3 inches, move 6, advance, and then miracle charge like another like 10 to 11 inches, 10 to 12 inches, and get all their buffs normally with no downside, meant they're super hard to actually interact with. So I like that now you have an option. So you can either keep them out of the transport. Like before, it was just a no-brainer. If you had Repentia, you had a transport. That was just like, it was a package deal. They might as well have come, the transport might as well have been part of the unit cost, right? No one took Repentia on their own. And so now the fact that a lot of the buffs happen in the command phase means you need to make them vulnerable for a turn, right? And I don't think that's the worst thing, because I think, well, Drukhari is a perfect example of what happens when you give overly offensive units whose downside is low toughness and low save. vehicle protection, and it gets really oppressive. And for me, Repentia were the similar. Like, if someone has a unit of Repentia, I'm literally within 24 inches, I'm fucked, and there's nothing I can do about it. Like if they have a 5 and a 6 for miracle dice, because they can just basically like shoot across the board, and there's nothing I can do. So at least now it's like, hey, if you want to do something like that, you need to like put them in a risky situation slightly. There's a cost there, right? It's not just like, and so I'm glad that that changed. The Triumph, they're saying, go ahead.
I think the Repentia changes how they play completely, because they've got the I think it's 2CP is fight on death.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is very powerful. That's a very strong ability. Now you basically don't ever get to kill Repentia in combat without getting damage back, but it turns them into this insane heat-seeking missile from 25 inches away into like kind of a linebacker unit where you're putting them behind walls and saying, you got to come get me. Like and I think I think that playstyle for the Repentia is a lot more rewarding for both the player and the opponent. Can I work around this unit that swings on death? Can the person playing sisters like position them correctly where they'll get the maximum amount of value? Whereas before they really were just kind of like brain dead. It was like, I drive my Rhino behind a wall, and the next turn they come out like they're Gene Stealers.
Exactly.
That don't need Swarm Lord support and hit way harder.
Yeah, and then fight twice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like before it was literally like a 24-inch missile. So you just park your Rhino, and then anything within 24, it's like you can't really stop it. Right? Through difficult terrain, they don't care. They'll just make they'll lose 2 inches, but they're moving freaking like 23 inches anyways.
Yeah.
So, I do think they gave almost everything core in the Sisters book, which was interesting.
Yeah,
like especially when you look at like, there's a lot that they gave core. Almost like all the infantry basically got core. I don't even know, like, the whole core mechanic, I just feel like it's not... I don't think it's doing what they think... It's not doing what I think the initial intention was, which was to help promote or to help increase the buffs on certain units. Because it seems like to me that either they hand it out like candy, in which case it's basically irrelevant, or it's so scarce that it really limits your army building because you end up kind of pigeonholed into just taking core stuff. Or if you don't do that, you just ignore it completely and you just avoid all core buffs and you go the opposite. You go no core. Like, to have an army where your characters or your buffs only affect, say, like a third of it because you only took a third of it core feels just very inefficient. At that point, you might as well just be taking the best things and just letting their basic math kind of overcome their like deficiencies, I guess, or stratagems or whatever. But I kind of feel like the whole core concept, like I like the concept in the end. I like what they were trying to do, but I feel like as the books are getting released, it seems like it's getting farther and farther away from that original, I guess, vision. And I guess at the end of the day, like it feels like there was a better way for them to have done what they tried to do, which is limiting the amount of buff stacking, especially on already powerful units. Right? I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. Like, originally I thought core was probably just going to be like just troops and then maybe like a couple iconic units, like the ones that are supposed to be like the highlights of the army anyway. And that would be an interesting way to affect like overall power level, where you could have something that's like you said, like quite good on its own, and you could like really juice it up stat line wise, but then it gets down to the core buffs. So, maybe it's still less good than other things, but it also doesn't need support.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't really matter. Like if they were to change that, let's say they change it to only troops are core for everyone. They just like blanket statement that it doesn't fix anything because AdMech core is just crazy right now. It doesn't matter. Like you can just win games with 80 Vanguard.
Well, that's my point,
like,
is that the reason it's not being as effect, like all it's done is shift where the power lies, in the sense that like some books, like look at Death Guard, for instance. Poxwalkers, cultists, and Plague Marines are awful troops. They're just, none of them are really good. Poxwalkers are like the best, but they're not great. They move 4 inches. They can't really kill anything outside of their one unit doing their mortal wound strat, and that's usually only with harbingers. Because even if you're not harbingers, you're still only probably getting like 2 or 3 mortals, and that's it. Like the rest of the attacks are AP 0, Strength 4, Strength 3, so they're probably not doing much damage anyways. So like outside of the mortal wound strat in harbingers, Poxwalkers generally don't do anything. And Plague Marines are overcosted. Cultists are just useless. They don't have OBSEC, whatever. So you have some books like that with very little effective troops. But then you have some books like Sisters and Admech and Drukhari, where their army can basically be all troops and be incredibly good. You know what I'm saying? So that disparity in troops, and look, I have no illusions that when Chaos Space Marines come out, basic Chaos Space Marines, because look, Marines get what, 13 different troop choices? Like they have something crazy like that. Intercessors, heavy intercessors, like I can't even count, and cursors, infiltrators. I don't even know all the names. They have like 13 different troop choices, or something like crazy like that. Chaos Space Marines are going to get Chaos Space Marines and cultists, and neither of them are going to be good. They just won't be. They won't be pointed well. They just won't be able to do that. Like, unless I can take 20-man Chaos Space Marine blocks, and they're cheap, and I get a ton of buffs for them, which won't happen. They're just not going to be good, right? Because they're just gonna be bolter Marines at the end of the day. They're not gonna have they're not gonna have like Chaos Space Marine super bolters. They're gonna have regular AP 0, Strength 4 bolters, which means already before the book's out, the troops are not good. So it's like you have these certain books that really rely on their troops, and just their troops alone can win the game, like Dark Eldar, Witches, Racks, Trueborn Cabalites. Like, are you kidding me? Those are all just amazing units.
Yeah. And any book that's ever had like good troops is one that will be good forever. Like even books that are crap but have like a good core couple troops will like hold on for dear life for so long. Like I don't think I wouldn't say the Orc book is particularly great anymore, but like boys can win games. Sometimes you can put 120 boys on the board and it can just take a game for you. Tyranids are terrible, but Gaunts and Hormagaunts are like just enough for they're so cheap and they can do something that you can like still dig games out. Even like Genestealer Cult, which is like literally the worst book. Acolytes can still like kind of bail you out because they're a decent troop choice. If you have good troop choices, you can continue to play the game.
Yeah, especially because like the way the game is obviously designed and army building is designed right now, the troop tax is a real thing, right? Like but in those books it's not a tax, right?
No,
so
you want them anyway.
Yeah, so for me, like for Death Guard, I take either small amount of Poxwalkers, in which case I still need to take other infantry units just to have the Poxwalkers. Like the fact that I have to take non-troop like other units to take troop units, it's like, why don't they just make Poxwalkers elite? Like it's at this point, like, you know what I'm saying? And just give me like Death Shrouds as core or some troops or something like that. But or Blight Lords or something. But yeah, like it just feels like there's a huge disparity in the troop choices. And I wish they had put more effort into making troop choices viable. Like if they'd given across all the books, even Necron Warriors are decent, but like yeah, and I mean even like Termagants have uses, and Genestealers are troops, aren't they?
Yeah, Genestealers are troops.
So we'll see what they do.
They did get pointed out of existence, but they
even
went
after
down
the drop
in the recent book. No, the recent drop, I think they're like fringe. Like I'm not running 40 like I used to, but like 2 packs of 5 and like a 12. They're a good little like put out a fire unit. They're so fast they can still kill more than 10 Hormagaunts. But yeah, they even Necrons, which are now on like the kind of bottom power level for the 9th books, they'll still get pulled along by warriors. Because again, every once in a while you can just put 80 warriors on the board and make them durable and make them double OBSEC, and they'll just steal games for you.
Yeah.
And you can build around that. If you have these troops, you always have like, here's a certain amount of troops that can do all the things in the game. They can move, block, they can go get objectives, they can do all those things, and then you can still build an army around that for whatever you have left.
For sure. So how do you think I think Admech's probably S tier at this moment. Drukhari and Sisters, I'd say probably A tier. I think they're high A tier, like probably some of the best of the A tier. But although I have seen, the one thing I will say about Admech is because they're not as fast as Drukhari, right? And they don't have the transport protection of Drukhari, they're a lot more susceptible to alpha strikes, if depending on the table, and they're a lot easier to get. It's a lot easier to like, I don't say easier to get to, but it's a lot easier to get to the soft, to the juicy stuff. Even if the juicy stuff is hard to kill, at least you can access it. Whereas sometimes I felt with Drukhari, with all the raiders basically being able to hide behind terrain and then pop over with no downside, and basically disgorge all their innards, it almost made it really hard to like get those parts. Whereas now, if you're fast enough, or if you have enough alpha strike, you can actually like hurt them a little bit more. Like things like the striders, things like the infantry. You know, like if you take a 20-man, you can't put it in a transport, so it's out in the open, right? Not in the like or it's behind cover or whatever.
Yeah.
But it just feels like it's a little harder to hide, and so that you can actually hurt them back a little bit more. Drukhari sometimes felt like I couldn't even touch them, like.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility that Drukhari has a higher skill cap. There are a lot of moving parts. I realize there's a lot of moving parts in AdMech. That book is very complicated, but a lot of them are just kind of like general decision making. Like you just like, okay, this guy is going to buff these units or this unit twice. Like it's not like there's a lot of things to remember, but that doesn't actually mean that it is hard to do. You just have to remember the thing, rather than like there's a lot of positioning with certain units in Drukhari, because they are very fragile.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, with AdMech, I just feel like if they do go first, sometimes the game's just over. There's one unit in your face that's sitting on like a 2+ armor save with transhuman, ignore AP 1 and 2, that kills anything it looks at. So
what unit is that?
That's the Vanguard. The Vanguard with their 3-shot, I think it's like Assault 3 18-inch range, but with the buffs, they can be like AP 1 27-inch range if you're Lucius and you've got the Manipulus behind you. You can Veil of Darkness them with the Manipulus, and then use the enhanced ammunition or enriched ammunition, and you auto wound on a 4+. So you're just like, here's 30
I don't know who thought that was a
wounds.
good stratagem on a 20-man unit with 3 shots.
No, it's really not okay with AP at range. The problem is you can't screen that out.
Yeah.
Like at 27-inch range, they can just kind of be like anywhere on the periphery and like take weird angles. Like, oh, here's my building here, and I'm here, and I've even got stuff over here to try and wall you out. But you just Veil of Darkness them to like some weird angle, and they can see behind the wall and get what they want.
And the problem is they're really hard to kill,
extreme.
because you just mentioned they have basically a is it a 3+ transhuman, like 3+?
3+ is like bare minimum. 2+ if they are being attacked by stuff that is damage 1, and they RP 1 and 2.
Not the save. I mean,
And
they have a transhuman that's like can't be wounded on better than a 3+, right?
4+.
Oh, 4+. And then they have like really good saves with like the prayers, which you can just pick now.
Yep. And then they can RP 1 and 2, and they can fall back and shoot in combat from another character, because you just give them a data tether. That one unit, I think, is the worst thing in the game right now.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were thinking about it. And it's only 160 points.
That's the problem.
So it's like, even if you can't trade anything into that efficiently. They deep strike in, they kill something probably already over its value, and then you're like, well, I have to go deal with it because it'll just keep shooting me because it can fall back and shoot.
Yeah.
And there's just no answer. Like, there's nothing that kills that efficiently.
What do you
with
think?
Transhuman up? Like,
yeah. One of the things that they did in AOS, which I actually thought, and I think they actually got rid of it in the new edition, but they used to actually have, I mean, in AOS, you used to take like 10 or 20. There was no like, I couldn't take like 12 or 15, right? But what do you think if in 40K they implemented a system where, say you take 10 Vanguards, it's say 100 points, but like 20 is like 200 points? Oh no, sorry.
You mean there's no...
Sorry, that's sorry. So you say take 10, it's 80 points, but like 20 is like 200 points. So it's like the cost of the unit as it gets bigger, actually the cost of the models actually scales higher. So it's like more expensive the more you take to actually offset the fact that there's a force multiplying effect at larger unit size. Do you think anything like that would ever be like good, or do you think that's just too complicated? They should just point them correctly.
I think instead of pointing it like that, I think the buffs going on them should start to increase, because they've done that somewhere. There's one that's already done that where it's like if it's power level something, it's like a 1 CP. If it's power level over that, then it's 2 CP.
That's like every cast buff. Like Poxwalkers, I want to bring them back. It's 2
so
CP or 3 CP depending on the unit size.
They should do that for a bunch of these AdMech ones that are like way too strong. Like in ammunition is obviously the one I'm thinking about. If you have a unit that is over 10, then it should be like a 3 CP strategy or something. So it can only be done like once per game.
Cloud of Flies is 4 CP on a Terminator unit. It's 2 CP normally, but if it's a Terminator unit, it's 4 CP, which is the most expensive stratagem in the game.
Yeah, and it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. It's like, why? Like, it's like that's literally your half your CP pool on one thing, and it's not even as good as before because if you're within 12 inches, you can ignore it.
Yeah.
So, but like that was something where someone was like, "Hey, clearly this is too good on Terminators, so we're gonna make it. Not only are we gonna make it more expensive, we're gonna make it 4 CP." But then no one turned around and said, "Hey, what about this thing on the Vanguards? Is this too good on the Vanguards? No, let's keep that 1 CP." Like it's like there's two, and I think I've said this before. It's like there's 2 different brains at Games Workshop, and they don't talk to each other. They don't look at precedent and what came before to help balance what's coming in the future. It seems like every book is created in a vacuum almost.
Yeah, what I've heard is that this batch that we're getting right now has all been balanced together. Sisters, AdMech, Oryx, Drukhari, Grey Knights, Thousand Suns. So that might be good for Grey Knights and Thousand Suns players, that these 6 have all kind of been done together. Because we've seen that they're just like a huge jump over everything else that we've got so far. And that they were all like kind of done at the same time against each other, which is inherently an issue because you should be balancing it against all the stuff that came before it. But it means that this batch of 6 is probably all generally around the same power level.
Thousand Suns, please be that powerful.
I mean, yeah, it'd be great. I've heard orcs are busted.
Yeah, I only complain that the books are too good until I get mine, and then I'm happy.
Yeah,
but no, the thing is, like, look, I'll be the first to admit, like, and you guys can mark down this quote. If Thousand Suns have broken ass shit that I think is too good, I will tell you, and I'll say this is too strong. I will not be the same as the Dark Eldar apologists who are saying like, oh, the meta needs to adapt and blah blah blah. Guys, guess what? Games Workshop agreed with me. All you fuckers that defended Dark Eldar were wrong. So
yeah, and they still have an absurd win rate.
And they're still really, really good. Like, that's the thing. It wasn't about ruining the faction. No one was saying, hey, let's destroy this faction. The issue was it was just too good. So let's scale it back a bit. Not a huge amount, but a good amount. The most and the grossest things. And the things that just obviously were not right, like the free CCP and like the 42 attack thing. Like, those are just clearly not meant to be. And let's see where it lands. And then who knows? We get another chapter approved at some point next year. That'll be another balance pass. So hopefully it continues.
Maybe.
Yeah, doubtful. All right, let's talk. Let's talk ACO. So that's the kind of last dance of the Drukhari, and before the new Sisters and AdMech meta or whatever that looks like. So what are your thoughts? Have you had a chance to look at any of the lists? Any wild predictions? Obviously, I know you, as part of the Art of War team, you have to cheer for your teammates. Do you think this is another Sean Naden magical run, or do you feel like John Lennon's going to come in with these Ultramarines that he's been kind of terrorizing everyone with? What are your thoughts?
I have to look at what they're actually running. Obviously, I'm going to root for Art of War regardless, and rightfully so. Like, regardless of what they're bringing, they've tested against each other, and you're not going to get much better testing than that. Like, I would guess probably of the Art of War members that are going, they will be like all in the top 20, with probably one of them taking it, unless somebody else like Naden or somebody goes on a run and takes it away from them.
Yeah.
One list that I'll bring up right away. This is Dallas. He's playing Forces of the Hive Mind. I don't know if BCP just ate his list, but you got to fix your list, dude. He has a patrol detachment that is both GSC and Tyranids in one detachment, with a Magus and Neurothrope as the HQ.
Can't he use the
Acolyte hybrids as troops, including Ripper Swarms with troops, Hive Guard, and Hybrid Metamorphs in the same elite choice.
Wait.
You can't do that.
Yeah, because you can't use Tyranid. You can't use
completely
Tyranids.
Illegal.
You can't use Tyranids as a faction keyword, right? To make like just like you can't use Chaos anymore.
You can't soup them.
Yeah.
you've never been able to suit them ever. So I don't know if that was BCP or he's just trying to like, I don't know, he was drunk when he did it. But Dallas, you gotta fix your list.
One thing that I think no one predicted was Richard Siegler showing up with Tau. I know Richard is the. I like that because I think Richard wants to prove. I think he's got a bit of a I guess a chip on his shoulder where he's like he wants to shut up all the people that keep complaining about Tau. Rightly so, probably, and to show that Tau can win. But then on the flip side, I'm like, well, if Richard Siegler, who's probably one of the best players in North America, wins with Tau, that doesn't mean that 89% of the Tau players can win with Tau. Just like when I was winning with my Chaos list, people would take it and be like, I don't understand this list, and I lose every game. Like people go like 0-4 with it. Like it's not you pick the jockey, not the horse in a lot of ways in 40K. And so I have high hopes for John. I think he's put a lot of thought in that Ultramarines list, and I think people have not been teching for that kind of list. And if it goes first, it's like really hard to counter. I've played lists like that similar. Like I've played Raven Guard lists that are similar to that. And I also think that, Naden, I always think he's in the running. So him and Nick seems to always blow it at some point for some reason. So, and against like random lists, like I feel like he's really good at playing like top meta lists, but then he runs into something really weird and like randomly loses to like on some weird thing, like weird point. I don't know. So I'm curious, like he lost to like a weird Beast of Nurgles, and then he lost that like Admech, like I don't know. It just feels like it just feels like he always gets like a weird matchup in his like run, and then ends up losing to like an off meta weird list. So we'll see, but yeah, if I'd put money on it, I would give it to let me just see who's even actually going to this thing.
There's a lot of people.
Who else
do I
like? Who else am I gonna give some shout outs to? My boy Anthony Birdsong, hope he does well.
Oh yeah.
Ben Jurek, great dude. Hope he does well. Good luck there. Give a shout out to who else we got here that I like. I don't like many people, so this is a very short list. JT
Jack
Steger
Harpster,
he's from Bellingham,
Encore.
so shout out to him from Dark Tower Games out in Bellingham. Those guys are great guys, so hopefully he does well. Who else? Nick Nanavati, obviously, as a brown person, I have to show solidarity with him, so I do hope he does well. And then Ruben Fernandez is a great guy too. Hope he does well. Good luck there. Anyone else? Yeah, that's basically it. If I missed you guys, I don't remember. That's because I scrolled too fast. So, but yeah, good luck to everyone that's going this week. I'm hoping I'm probably not going to really catch too much of the stream games, but I guess it does start on Friday, so it's a 9-game event. What do you think of this move to 9 games as the standard for Super Majors? Do you think that I actually really like it because it reminds me of the Australian circuit. The one thing though I loved about Australian though is everyone plays the 9 games. I don't like the fact that it's 9 games, but you only play 6 unless you're in the top 8. I think it should just be 9 games total, personally, for everyone. What are your thoughts on that?
I get why they do the cut, because if you've made it 6-0, it feels good to now be locked into a top 8 placing, because like you've done the work.
Have you though? If it's a 9-game event, you haven't actually done the work. You have to go 9-0. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it just sucks to be like. I guess what I'm saying is after a certain point, you are guaranteed to be playing like the strongest players. Like the guy that goes 0-3 and then wins his next 6 probably did not ever play a hard player until like the 6th round.
Yeah, but
as opposed to the guy who goes 6 and then loses the next 3. He probably lost to the 3 other best players there, right?
Well, here's why I don't like it.
You come like 50th, even though you went 6-0 to start with.
Yeah, here's why I don't like it. Because we often see, and I'll use was it Dallas Open that that Mark Herzl won with the Admech?
I think so.
Yeah. So we often see really good players, some of the best players there, just like you mentioned, sometimes get knocked out in, say, a game 4 or game 5 because they played another one of the best players there, right? But then you get situations where someone that went 6-0 managed to dodge some of the harder matchups. So the reason I like everyone playing the 9 games, it means like even if you're say 8 and say there's like say at the end of 8 rounds, there's only one 8-0 player, right? They're going to then play in that 9th game the best 7-1 player, right? But maybe that best 7-1 player is actually someone that has a really good list and a really good player, but they just hit a bad matchup early on. And so why I like that everyone plays the 9 games is because it means that you don't have to just beat the best that you got lucky to play, but you also potentially have to play against players that maybe had a bad round but have now come back. So it reminds me again of that, like, kind of going back to the whole point of like an elo system, or I know in Magic the Gathering it's basically almost everyone loses rounds. Like when you play it's best of 3, I think, or best of 5. I don't know. I don't play, but like you might lose like you to get into like the top, you need to go like 8-4 or like 10-2 or something like that, right? Like it's not, they don't expect a perfect record. And then I like that. I like the fact that it's not about being perfect, but it's about being able to play, even if you went say 7-1, and if you're 8-0, you can't like then like your worst matchup. Say they got kicked out. Say they got a bad matchup early and lost. You're not like safe now. You know, like they don't have like that person that has your number potentially to actually that could beat you isn't necessarily out of the picture. And so I like that. There's something I like about that. And I wish it was everyone 9 games. Now, I understand from actual logistics point of view, they want to fucking pack up and get the fuck out of there. So they're like, okay, if we can pack up all the tables but 8, that makes our lives a lot easier on the Sunday. Yeah. It's actually a lot easier than if like they're only doing 5 games and they couldn't pack up until after because if they're doing, say, a 6-game event, they would do 3 and 3, in which case they wouldn't pack up the entire event until the end of day Sunday. But now, because it's 8 tables on the Sunday, they can basically pack up the entire event Sunday morning and just leave the 8 tables. So in that sense, I understand where FLG is doing it. But I really wish that it was the full 9, personally.
Yeah,
especially if you're traveling all that way.
Really what you're saying is that we are looking for rewarding the most consistent rather than the guy who had a hot run.
Or just got good favorable matchups. Or
that's what I mean by hot. That's what I mean by hot run. If you are meant to win, you're meant to win, and you win all 9 of your games. It doesn't really matter what path you took. Like eventually, you were playing guaranteed the other people that were all winning. But sometimes, you just get like matchup luck that carries you really far.
And that's why I still advocate for ELO. Like I remember playing in the CTTC like a few years ago, and my game 2 was like Nick. Then I had Steve Pamprine. Then I had like Will Albalaz, who's playing like the guy that cheats a lot, Tao, and then my final game is TJ. Whereas like TJ had like 4 no names, and then me. Like he had like the easiest run, and I was like, what the fuck? I like played the hardest game of my life against Nick and like beat him by like 1 point. Played the hardest game against Steve Pamprine, and like literally I think he timed out like 20-1, like literally tooth and clawed my way to the finals, and then had like the hardest games against bad, like really tough matchups. And it's like I felt that like I actually played a way harder event and performed at a much higher level, but it's like then and then I had to actually leave my game in turn 5 because the TO fucked up the pairings going into the final round, and he had to re-seed the entire tournament, which took an extra hour and a half, which meant if I didn't leave, I was going to miss my flight home. So I literally had to like on turn 5, I was like, okay, TJ, you win, and I like packed up my army and like got to the airport with like 2 minutes to get to my gate because we were like so late for the anyways, that's a whole other story. All right, so I've made my predictions. You've made yours. We'll check back next Monday with that. Let's go to some viewer questions. And just a reminder, guys, if you want to get your questions onto the Best Overall Show, not Best Overall Show, Competitive Corner, how do you do that? Well, there's a few ways to do it. First, you can sign up for DeploymentZone.tv, which is our partner in crime on producing this show. And DeploymentZone.tv is basically the Netflix of Warhammer. So they have a ton of content that they produce, including Competitive Corner, which is streamed there exclusively once a month. They also have shows from Play on Tabletop, Winter's SEO, a bunch of other content creators. So there's a great amount of content. If you go there, they have a Discord that you get access to when you sign up for DeploymentZone.tv. Definitely check them out. And in that Discord, there's a special channel where you can ask me questions. The second way to ask questions is to leave a comment on the show. So I have a few questions that were left on last week's show, which I'm going to answer today. The third is to actually join the Duplicity Paint Studio Discord, which is now new and very small, but there is a channel in there that you can ask questions, and the link for that is in the show notes. And then the third, sorry, I don't even know what number I'm on. The fourth and final way is to just ask it live on the show. So now if you guys are in the audience and you have any live questions, please leave them in the chat. But with that said, I'm going to start with some viewer questions. From the Discord. So the first question is from Lemon, and he says, I wanted to ask you both how you do approach list building for a teams tournament in a comparison to a singles event.
Shall I start?
Sure. I mean, yeah. We'll probably have the exact same answer because we're both on the basically like working on Team Canada stuff. So and
Same team.
WTC.
Yeah.
So.
When I'm playing singles, I have to take everything into account. So my list is as most take all comers as I can, and it is obviously whatever I want to play. When I'm on a team, it's whatever the team needs. If I have to play something different, if I've got to be thrown under the bus, if they're like, hey, you're playing the like stall army, we're just going to throw you at every bad matchup we can get, and you're going to grind out like a tie. Like, you got to do that. So it's very much, you will skew harder. You will take weird lists that are meant to throw people off and maybe not do what you would typically require of them in a singles event. You're playing to accomplish the goal the team needs rather than win every game. So it really is a very, very different style of list building.
Yeah, and just to quickly add 2 points to what Alex said, everything he said is totally valid. First thing also is understanding what kind of team event you're playing. So the WTC World Team Championship for 40K use a 20-0 system. Things like the Las Vegas team tournament, and it seems like some of the FLG team tournaments that they're doing are not a 20-0 system. They're much similar to the what's that team big team what's the big team tournament that's in Chattanooga?
ATC?
ATC. So the ATC American Team Championships does not use a 20-0 system. They use basically a win-loss-draw system, which is you need 3 out of the 5 games.
Wrong.
Is it? Am I wrong?
It's wrong. No, I'm saying their system is wrong.
Oh, okay. I was like, I'm pretty sure they use a.
Play the game.
I don't think they use a 20-0 system. The FLG one's
Win-draw
definitely.
loss is the wrong way.
Well, hold on. I think it's a horrible choice. So win-loss-draw in a team tournament, I actually think is really dumb because what it does is it means you just basically put together the 5 best singles lists that you can make. And the other thing about team tournaments is just understanding like what lists you're just going to skew a lot harder in your list, and then you're going to have a set of lists that you don't want to play, and then you're going to have your lists built around what kind of lists what kind of lists that you don't like your teammates don't want to play so you can beat them. So essentially it's a lot more rock paper scissors, whereas in singles you're trying to build a more balanced list that is never going to auto lose a matchup.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Lemon also asks actually I'll take one from the chat because I like this one, it's interesting, and I just talked about it. Sam Lemon asks, I don't know if that's the same Lemon or there's lots of lemons, I guess,
Probably.
in chat. How did you find playing against TJ? Despite the cheating incident, I've heard good things playing against him.
I already know the answer to this.
Well, I've committed to forgiving. It was my birthday today, and one thing I said is that everyone that has hurt me in the past few years, I've forgiven them because I have no place for spite and hatred in my heart. What I will say is that I was not surprised what happened to TJ with the cheating incident based on the games I've had with him, and that I didn't enjoy them is all I'll say. That's as much as I'll say. And yeah, it just, yeah. So that's all I'll say. I don't want to drag anyone's name in the mud, but the less I say is better, but I'll just say I wasn't surprised with what happened. And it's well documented to my teammates that I've talked to about it. So it's not like it wasn't something where I like just started saying it after. Literally every game I played with him afterwards, you could probably pull up a fairly long chat log with me and my teammates about the various irregularities is what I'll call them during the game. All right. So, all right, let's ask one from a different Discord. Dorn's Apothecary asks, appreciating that most people acknowledge there are some degrees of power creep as codex release, what do you think we can truly know if do you think we can truly know if a 9th edition codex is overpowered until we have them all? I do. And this is one of the things that actually really frustrates me about a lot of people that are making excuses for the really good, strong books, It's like if you've played the game for long enough, or the edition, and you're knowledgeable enough about how the game works, and you can play it at a high level, you can very easily tell within 2 hours of reading a book where it kind of lands, generally within the power level, I guess. And obviously there's always, and the thing is, books only ever improve with time. So if I say read the AdMech book and I'm like, oh, this is A tier, generally it'll go up to S tier as people learn how to play it better and discover new things and new ways to play it. It generally doesn't, and then as new books come out, that's actually what reduces the power level, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I feel like it is pretty easy to tell if a book is overpowered comparatively. And it's very easy to do simple apples to apples comparisons across books and to look at two things and say, these are not the same and these are unfair, right? So I definitely think it's possible. I don't know what your thoughts are, Alex.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, again, there's the kind of like the Incredibles joke of like, if everyone's superpowered, then no one's superpowered. Like, there is sort of a balancing effect that way, but the problem is that that's not universally the case now. We've seen 2 books that are crazy strong that like put Necrons to shame. So clearly we have a power creep of codexes over Necrons. Even if the rest of them are all at AdMech power level, that still leaves like the first 4 codexes in the dust, unfortunately. Right. And even the books that are really strong, they were really strong and they had a huge variety of builds, but those were the books that we could actually adapt to. Like, the meta will adapt. Those weren't so powerful that there was no option. When I was playing against Marines, I built the Doom McCarran list specifically to go out and beat Marines. And I had a couple bad matchups, but that was okay because it was a list that could go toe-to-toe with the best Marine lists, and that's what I was going to have to play on top table. So that's fine. That's just like an acceptable thing. I could adapt to that. AdMech is so good, I can't beat it. Like, if I'm playing somebody at my skill level who's playing AdMech, I just don't win, period. And that's unacceptable for a game and unacceptable for codex creep. It isn't just like, that's not creep anymore. It's leaps and bounds better.
If only there was a way that they could like update their rules more regularly to ensure balance happened. I just, the technology just, hopefully someone invents something like that at some point.
Or when they bring out a book that has specific point changes, they actually put some in it.
Yeah.
That was an option.
Yeah. So Lemon also asks, I've often talked about how I'm not good at 9th edition as you were during 8th. My question for both you and Alex, and relates to reasons why your form isn't as good. Is it simply your list isn't adapted for the meta, you aren't as knowledgeable with game armies, or you personally aren't playing as well? It's all 3, to be honest. A, I'm not playing as much, especially because due to COVID. B, as the new, look, a big part of being good at the game is not only just knowing how your army plays, not only understanding how other armies play, and that doesn't mean just reading about how they play, but actually the third thing is playing games. Like, the best thing you can do to improve your play is to play. It's not to read about playing, it's not to watch videos about playing, it's not to like build lists, it's not to like theory craft, it's not to like go on podcasts. The number one thing you can do to be a better player is to actually just play the game. And when you're not doing that, you're just inherently worse. I could read 1,000 books on 40K, and someone that's played 20 games is probably still better than me. They have the reps, they have the muscle memory, they have the processes down. And so there's no amount of not playing that will ever make up for playing, right? So as someone, and I know Alex is probably in the same boat, we, outside of TTS, we haven't played very many games in a year. It's almost been a year. I think I played maybe 6 games in real life, 6, right? I haven't played in a competitive environment, right? Outside of TTS, and even TTS, I think I have like 60 hours logged, and I've been playing people with like 800 hours logged. It's mental. So just the practice and the reps is the most important thing.
Yeah, I've got like 400 hours on TTS. I just looked right now because I knew this was going to come up. Like, just last week alone, I've got 15 hours.
Okay, you're beating
me. If you're not playing that much, like, your skills are declining. I even feel that my skills are declining playing TTS as well, because the scale of the game feels different. It's much less like tactile, where I can look physically at the board and go like, I know what kind of distance that is. And I'm more willing to be like very detailed in my movement, because TTS is so clunky and is kind of a pain in the ass. So, and there's just other stressors when you're playing a real game.
Yeah.
You gotta play to get better.
Yeah. The other thing I'll mention is
And
that like,
none of us are getting to play.
absolutely. The other thing I'll mention is that, because the game is, there's so many variable situations, like there's millions of situations, and like permutations of scenarios, things that could happen, and lists you could play. One of the benefits of playing is that the only way to learn what to do in certain situations is by actually seeing that situation on the board. And I'll give you a really good example. So like the Eldar Flyer list of 8th edition, or the Castellan list, like the first time I played the Castellan list, I lost because I was like, I didn't know what things I needed to do to play against it. But then the second time, I took all the lessons from the first game and I was able to beat it. So, but like that's not with my specific list against the Castellan list. There's no like place I can go that will tell me all of those things to do, because that's just way too granular. You know, a lot of people say, well, oh, like screen your characters and like hold objectives. It's very it's very macro. But when I want to look at on a certain terrain layout in a certain mission against a Castellan list, how do I deploy my army? What do I put in deep strike? When do I use a stratagem, my warp surge on my plague bears? When don't I do it? When do I, reroll perils? When is that warp time super important and I do that? All of those like decision points, the only way to know to know whether you're doing the right thing in that specific moment is to play those games and get those reps. It's the only way. And so people always ask like, what's the best thing I can do to improve my play? And it's just to play. It's just to play lots and lots of games. And the best players are playing lots and lots of games. It's no secret. And that's why I don't think I'm very good right now. It's not because I can't be good. I'm sure with enough practice and playing enough games, I do have the ability to get back to that level of play. But at this rate, I'm kind of, I'm going to go to LVO this year. I don't know. Do you have your LVO ticket, Alex? Are you going?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think LVO for me is more going to be just like a reunion and catch up and beer and pretzels and just get really drunk. Because at this point, there's very little point in me even trying to like compete at the LVO. I won't have the reps and it's just not going to be a thing. So Wyatt Turk says, happy birthday, buddy. Thanks, Wyatt. I appreciate it. Nilius asks in chat, not to dig too deeply into the previous incidents, but what kind of irregularities should players watch out for? So one thing I will always, so here's the thing. You don't want people to cheat, but don't also allow yourself to be cheated, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is ask lots of questions, over communicate with your opponent what they're looking to do and what they're supposed to get. So for instance, say, Alex, you have a unit of Gene Sealers and you're picking up dice to attack me. I'm going to say, how many attacks do they have? Right? Like, do they get extra attacks? Okay, so then I will confirm with you that's 30 attacks, right? Your 10 Gene Sealers, whatever. And then I'll be like, there's strength 4 and I'm toughness 5. So you need 5s. So like, we'll talk through the dice numbers. Because oftentimes what a lot of people, when they do this cheating, is they just roll dice and they pull up dice. And then if you're not clear on what results actually are needed, and they've already moved on to the next step, that's where there can be some irregularities. Also, make sure that like they write things down. So for instance, if someone has say 4 or 5 different psychers, make sure they have a very clear page where every spell for every psycher is written down that you can reference, because what happens in those kinds of games is you get, especially in 8th edition, you got a lot of psychic, hey, this guy's gonna cast this, then this guy's gonna cast this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And next thing you know, you're 8 spells into the psychic phase, and you have no fucking idea who's cast what, and who actually has what spells anymore, because it's gotten super confusing. So just make sure there's a physical tool there for you to help, for instance, track that certain casters aren't casting too many spells or spells they don't have. Make sure anytime there's a reroll or something like that, you're asking where that's coming from. So like if someone says rerolling 1s, ask them, where do you get that rerolling 1s? And if they're like, oh, it's from my character, and it's like, which character? And if they go to measure and it's 7 inches away, well, hey, you don't get the rerolls. Because oftentimes that'll happen, right? They'll say, oh, it's from this character, and they'll just point to it. And then you'll look at it and be like, there's no way that's within 6 inches. So show me that that's within 6 inches that you actually get that benefit, right? So these are the kinds of things that you need to do during a game sometimes to keep your opponent honest. And just, it's just about advocating and doing as much as you can to not let yourself get cheated. Same with movement measurements, right? Discuss the measurements and make sure everyone's clear on what a measurement is. So like, hey, before, or like say he wants to move something in charge, before he even moves, right? Say, okay, how far is he now? So you're 6 inches away. Sorry, you're 12 inches away. So it's a 6-inch move plus a 6-inch charge. So that when it comes to the charge phase, if he's like 4 inches away, all of a sudden, there's something going on. So it's just, again, it's about pre-confirming the information and agreeing to the game state with your opponent. That way, if they try to do anything kind of shady, it's a lot harder for them. And again, I do that naturally, not just for my own knowledge, but also because I have been cheated a lot. And that's just my best practice to ensure that I'm keeping my opponent clear and honest. I fucking ask a million questions. Okay, what's your ballistic skill? What's your strength? Okay, how do they get that reroll ones? What is it coming from? These are all the things that you should consistently ask to make sure that everything's above board. Because I've even done that the opposite, where I've assumed a unit I had was within 6 inches. Like I didn't measure. And then lo and behold, I go to measure and they're like 6.5 inches. And I'm like, oh, I fucked up. Right? But it's like, so I've even done the opposite where I've like basically cheated accidentally. So it's like, that's not, and that's not malicious. I'm just saying like that's happened. You make mistakes. And sometimes it is a mistake like that. And sometimes it's not a mistake. But the only way to like keep everyone honest is to like have that conversation and just talk through each of those points. And then that way what you'll do is also prevent lots of mistakes from happening. I don't know, Alex, if you have any kind of additional thoughts?
No, I think you were pretty thorough. I mean, as far as questions to ask, you can also start to tell if people are looking to cheat by how they answer questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like 40K is not a game of hidden knowledge. You're supposed to know all the things. So let's do an example like a really simple one. You pointed a unit, you're like, how far do they move? And they're like 6 inches. You're like, okay, so I'm safe over here? I feel like, yeah. Like, okay, cool. And then suddenly they're like, oh, I have warp time, so I actually can move 12. Like, you knew what I meant when I said how far do those move.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to give me all the information. Like, if somebody was like, hey, how far do your Gene Stealers move? And I'm like, oh, 8. That's clearly just lying. I'm like, it's 8 plus a run, plus a double run, plus Swarm Lord moving them again. Mm-hmm. Like, they weren't asking the physical movement characteristic of that model. They were asking what the threat range was. They might not ask it like that, but that really is what they're looking for, is how far do these models actually move when you apply all the things. Like if somebody pointed to the Vanguard and you're like, what do they do? And they're like, oh, well, they're 3 shots at 18-inch range, strength, whatever, right? That's not what the person is actually asking with current Vanguard. They're like, what can you do to that unit? Mm-hmm. I can give it AP1, I can boost its range, I can deep strike it, I can give it this insane stratagem. That's what they're actually asking. So if people are holding that information back from you, that's a very good sign that they are trying to screw you over. They're mm-hmm. looking for that gotcha. Oh, well, you didn't ask if I could put a stratagem on them. Like, you know what I meant. Come on.
Right. One thing that I would also recommend is get digital codexes of all the codexes on your phone. However, you may or may not do that. And then, mm-hmm. in between your matches, once you've got your matchup, if you have time, go through the stratagems, just give a quick glance to the stratagems, look at their list, double check warlord traits, double check relics, just so you're clear on what they do before the game. Ask your friends, hey, I'm playing this guy, anything, and if you're unfamiliar with the list, is there anything that I should be aware of? Like, when I play Chaos, I don't need to do that because I know everything. I know the faction. But like, if I'm playing AdMech, I'm probably going to spend 2 or 3 minutes going through their stratagems, going through their rulebook, their codex. So I usually carry around a copy of every codex with me digitally when I go to events, so that if I do need to pull up, and obviously this place like Wikipedia where you don't even need to, you can just go to now. But I would highly recommend you spend 2 to 3 minutes just reviewing their book and just checking through, just taking a quick glance, and then having it with you so that, say they're doing their movement phase and you're not clear about stuff, you can reference it during the game. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll have my opponent's codex on my phone open, so that like if they're, say, doing their movement phase or something's happening where I'm not actually playing the game, I can spend that time to kind of just check things. So if something happened that felt a little bit too good, I can just triple check to make sure it's correct. And then that way, if there is an incident of incorrect play or cheating, I catch it right then and there, right? So that's something that I would do. All right. Next question.
Another one, just really quickly, is ask the TO.
Yeah.
TO might know the field and go like, yes, you have to watch out for this player. Or like, no, he's a great guy, don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
That can sometimes answer all of your questions immediately just by asking the TO.
And then I know this is kind of a side question. All right. Hill 42442H asks, do you expect revised supplements for the 6 chapters that were released in 8th so that these get the unique tools of the newer supplements? I mean, I expect them because they're Space Marines. I swear to God, Games Workshop, if you fucking release any of them before all the other codexes are out, I will like burn something down.
We don't care anymore. We no more Marines. We're done. Fuck off.
Look, I expect them because we got them this last edition. Whether or not I think they should come out in the next 3 years, the answer is no. They should come out at the end of 9th edition.
Yeah. Or just release them again in 10th or something.
Because they were basically at the end of 8th, right?
Now.
Yeah, they work great.
Yeah.
All right, from the chat.
Yeah, basically the last thing of 8th.
From the chat here. Isante asks, how long should we expect to be getting violated by the new admech? Too long.
Yeah. As long as Drakari took.
Until probably Orcs are out, and then I don't know. Because all those las cannons are going to do jack all against 120 T5 boys teleporting into your face.
I mean, that depends on if boys are the future.
Yeah, well, it won't be the boys. It'll be the Snagga boys, because obviously Games Workshop is going to point them like 1 point higher than regular boys for an extra toughness,
strength,
and better like weapons and stuff. All right. It's Sammy writes, what are your thoughts on the new secondary objectives, Alex?
There's new ones.
Secondary. I was gonna say new secondary objectives. We can call them that.
I like a couple of the new ones. Nothing changed enough to really make me interested.
Mm-hmm.
I will continue to take new scramblers, and engage on all fronts forever. And I don't know, something else. I don't really care. Nothing changed enough for me to doesn't shape the game in any way.
Yeah. Sam, don't ask that question. I have it in my log from last week, so you can't ask it again in chat. I'm cutting to it, okay? Yeah, I agree with Alex. Basically, I didn't think they went enough, and I also think that the fact that the primary missions didn't change is a complete outrage and disgrace. So, yeah, I'm very disappointed in the mission changes. Sorry, I'm happy with what we got, right? But I feel like it was underwhelming, completely.
Yeah, it could have been so much more.
You know, if only there was a way that they could release secondaries like regularly, and get them to us somehow.
Drum.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just such a shame that nothing like that exists. Reza Prime asks, how would you run 15 Blade Guard in Blood Angels or Black Templar? I have a slight obsession with these models. I mean, I probably
the correct
wouldn't.
answer is White Scars.
I mean, Blood Angels, I don't think they're bad, and I don't think they're bad on those lists. Just 15 just seems like a lot, especially against new, especially the fact that they don't really go in transports, or impulsors are bad. It means you have 15 expensive models that are going to get picked up instantly by a lot of lists as they foot slog across the board.
That's why I would say that the correct answer is White Scars, because you get the advance now, and they're actually a lot quicker. Yeah. And there's a couple of White Scar stratagems that hook them up pretty nicely.
Yeah. Texas Barbecue asks in chat, Jim, if 1,000 suns are dope, will you go in for a full army? Well, first of all, I already have a 1,000 suns army. And second, I just ordered a Mutalith Vortex Beasts, a 1,000 suns, the Battle Force, start collecting, because you got 10 Rubric Marines, and you get 10 more Xanagor. So I'm hoping the Xanagor, and they dropped by 2 points, I think, in the new chapter proved. And you get an Armin, which I'll just turn into, maybe I'll convert him into the new model, Infernal Master. I'll use that as my conversion, whatever that rules are. And then I also ordered 10 Chaos Space Marines to turn into Noise Marines. So I am adding to my 1,000 suns. I'm hoping in the league, BC 40k league, which we're about to start next week, I believe. I'm actually running 1,000 suns primary. So the league rules basically mean that you have to pick a faction to be primary as your warlord. So I'm going to be running 1,000 suns for the rest of the season, the summer basically, hoping to make them work, and especially hoping once the book comes out, I can kind of seamlessly transition into them. But again, we'll see. Especially with, I'm running 1,000 suns. I'm hoping that the mono faction buff is good enough, and that the rules are good enough that we'll see. I'll be able to run mono faction 1,000 suns, but I'm a little concerned because when I look at the chapter approved points changes, the fact that they're supposed to be current codex, And then things like Skyfires, Mutilated Vortex Beasts, the casters changed a little bit. Magnus didn't change at all, points level. So the lack of points changes actually makes me think that there's a lack of rules changes. And if there's a lack of rules changes on, say, like a Zangor Skyfire or Zangor the Shaman actually went down 15 points. But the lack of rules changes on things like Predators didn't change. Defilers didn't really change. Like, they went to the new points from Death Guard. But Thousand Suns just don't have a lot of viable units. I was really hoping we'd see like points in there for some new things, like, I don't know, Psychic Dreadnoughts, maybe from 30k, Asylum Dreadnoughts. That'd be really cool.
I mean,
or those robots.
You say that maybe nothing changed. You say that maybe nothing changed because the points didn't change much, but I mean, Vanguard didn't change, and they're like game breaking now.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's hard to tell. One thing I will say is that I really hope they've adjusted the Legion trait to work on more than just the Sorcerers. I hope the Sorcerers get some bonus, but then there's actually a Legion trait for like the regular Thousand Sun stuff. Because every other army, yeah, like right now it's literally just like 5 models in your army that gets Legion trait, and it's like, it's good, but it's not amazing. So I'd love to see some sort of army-wide Legion trait, and maybe that comes with the various cults instead of just having a stratagem and like a spell. I hope each of those gets a Legion ability, just like, guess what? The fucking 6 AdMech ones got, just like all the Marine books got, just like all the Drukhard Covens got, right? It's not that outrageous, guys. Give it to me. Let me see here. What else? The next question. All right. Last question for the show. Second last question. Sam asks, how often do you both play on the clock? What are some tips, tricks for the newbie in using a clock and being better prepared? I generally don't play on TTS, which is mostly what I've been playing. But in any event, I almost always play on a clock, unless I know the person I'm playing and I know we're gonna have a fast game. I've been burned too many times on clock stuff. So I don't know about you, Alex.
Yeah, I don't play on it much. A lot of the times that I've made it to the top table, I've known the person across from me, and I know it's not going to be an issue. I have been asked to use a clock, which was usually because I was playing a horde, which ended up being a mistake for my opponent 9 times out of 10. I'm going to get you on clock. No, you're not. Usually, if you're looking to start using a clock or you think it's going to be an issue, just use it. Like, just continually use it for like every game. Maybe not even put your opponent on it. Just have it where you've got like an hour-and-a-half timer, and every time you're doing your thing, just turn yourself back onto the clock and just keep yourself timed. It's one more thing to think about. You do your turn, you do all your things, and then you do like one more thing where you like affect the clock, and just like anything else in Warhammer, just some repetition to make it like just a habit, just like in nature.
One thing I would recommend doing is to speed up your play is to like have tools to make your game faster. So things like spell cards, things like so for my Thousand Suns, for instance, when I had like 4 to 5 psychers in my list, I had little index cards with like each caster with all the spells written down. And so as I'm playing the game, it's very easy for me to reference that, and I'm not going through all these different documents stuff. I grab my card for my psychic phase and I just do it. Right? Obviously, know your rules for your list. Know your own stats. That's gonna be the biggest thing. The times that I'm slowest is when I'm having to open my codex to find out my own rules. If for your stratagems, have stratagem cards from your deck and pull out all the ones that you're not gonna use that game, and then all the ones that you are gonna use have in front of you on the edge of your table. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the best way to play faster is to just play lots and be familiar with your list. That's like the biggest tip I can give you for increasing your speed of play. Andrew asks, this is the last question. Have you ever considered the Vindicator later as a short? No, it's awful. It's a Vindicator. Yeah, anything on the Rhino chassis is just basically unplayable at this point in the game. Unfortunately.
Continually paying for the sins of 5th edition Rhino Rush, whatever edition that was.
3rd edition, I think. Blood Angels Rhinos with like overcharged engines.
I just forget.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, 18 inches across the board, then get out, then charge. Yeah. Your whole army's just like 30-inch threat range.
Yeah, and back then there wasn't a lot of terrain on the boards. It was like Warhammer Fantasy levels of terrain.
Nope.
So like literally just like you just like set up in an open table and you just run across. There's no like buildings,
Yeah.
difficult terrain. Like it wasn't a thing, right? Or you played with like cardboard buildings, like cardboard cutouts from the White Dwarf. The one thing I will say though,
Yeah.
terrain has come a long way in 15, 20 years. Because I remember playing,
Yeah.
we used to, one of the things I used to love to do is build terrain. And everything was like a house, build a popsicle sticks and like foam core, and like spray painted gray, or it was like craters. Like those are the things that you built. And now it's like, it seems a lot, the terrain, especially with like the 3D printing MDF stuff, laser etching, it's gotten like a lot better in the last like 15 years.
Oh yeah.
All right, guys.
The game needs it too.
Alex, any kind of closing thoughts? Closing anything?
No.
All right.
I'm excited to see when Orcs come out. I really hope that the release schedule is cranking up. If Sisters Codex comes out and then they're like, yeah, or pre-release or pre-orders come out next week, I'll be super happy.
Well,
Because I just want the shit to start coming. Just give me all the books. If they gave us the next 3 books in a week from Sisters, I would be thrilled.
yeah. So
Let's just
okay.
get
So I
this
actually
show
have
on
a
the
question,
road.
and maybe this is my last thought. So this Saturday, we know that we're not getting the second wave of Sisters. So there's still the Castigator. There's still the chicks with sword and board. I believe those are the 2 units still left to be pre-ordered. I don't think they're on pre-order this week. Definitely not the Castigator. I think there's one more unit. It's either them and the Nundums are not coming out the next week, which means that's going on pre-order this Saturday though. Those things are not on pre-order this Saturday, which means they probably won't be on pre-order until the week of the 19th, right? Now the question is on the week of the 19th, which is the next unknown pre-order date, that's also the date I believe that the Age of Sigmar stuff is going on pre-order, if I'm correct.
Yeah, 3.0 comes out then, I think.
So 3.0 Age of
Which
Sigmar. I'm just pulling it up here because
I hope it doesn't affect 40K's schedule.
okay.
Really
so here we
hope.
go. So Dominion. Oh yeah. So Dominion, which is what we're talking about, which is the new AOS, goes on pre-order the 19th. So that would mean, if that's the case, I doubt they'll also do the second wave of Sisters that date, right? And they're definitely not going to do Orcs on the 19th if that's the case. If Dominion, right? Because Sisters will still be waiting. I could be wrong. That means the earliest we could potentially see for the release of the Sisters, so the pre-order for the Sisters second wave is the 26th, or it could be the 19th. It's just only 1 or 2 kits, so maybe it comes, maybe it goes on pre-order the 19th, but comes out the 26th. But what that means is, the 3rd is actually the release of AOS 3, and I would imagine that on the 26th we're not going to get like Orcs, for instance. It's not going to come out the same week as the 3rd. I think we'll probably get Orcs closer to the 17th or the 24th of July. So closer to the end of July versus the early start of July. That's my prediction. I'll come back to this video in 4 weeks, which means puts Thousand Sons and Grey Knights into August, as far as I'm concerned. And obviously we also haven't seen the pre-order for the second Warzone book. So I'm curious when they're gonna kind of slot that in, because they previewed that at the same time as the Sisters stuff on the first day of the reveal. So I assumed it was gonna be out right around the same time, but we haven't seen that go on pre-order. So maybe next week, or on the 19th, sorry, we get the AOS 3 pre-orders, plus we get book 2, plus the remaining Sisters kits. That's kind of the...
It'd be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right, guys, that's been the best of that's been Competitive Corner. My name is Jim. This is Alex over here. Tune in on again, no stream, guys, this week. Thursday, Best Overall show's back. I have special guest of Brohammer fame Daniel Smith, who will be co-hosting with me. David Koska is basically moving across America, so he's out of the show indefinitely for now. And then next week we'll be back with another episode. So have a great week. Oh, so someone just asked a question, but the stream is over.